Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Your Average Tabletop. I'm Zach,
And I'm Pepper.
and today we're going to give our first impressions of Scholars of the South Tigris from Garphill Games, which is probably one that was on my most anticipated list of the year. I would say, just like I'm sure next year when they come out with Inventors of the South Tigris, that will be towards the top of my list as well. Even though I don't know anything about it, and to be fair, I didn't really know much about this one either. I think I knew it kind of had some tracks in it and it utilized some dice, but outside of that, I didn't really know much of it. I didn't need to. I really love Garphill Games, so know that going into this first impression that I'm just a huge fan of Garphill Games in general, so I tend to like these types of games, and yeah, I would say, though, overall, I think they've kind of gotten heavier and heavier.
Oh, you think?
So,
You
so,
think they've
so some
gotten
of that
a
maybe
little
like
bit.
some of their, maybe like the Raiders of the North Sea, the Architects of the West Kingdom. Um, I would say there's probably a pretty big gap between
Yeah, I
that
would
and the
say
South Tigris so far, the two that are in there so far,
kind of
and especially this one.
after Architects. I'd say it's kind of a split there, where they get a little more complicated, a little more to the games, to where you can't just blindly say, "Oh, if you like Architects, go check out all their other games." You do have to put a little more thought into it. You're not necessarily going to be ready for some of the later games, and I mean
Makes me think because they had it a little. It must have been around the same time, or a little bit earlier than Architects and stuff. They had Circadian's
oh, yep.
Last Light, First Light.
I always forget.
I always get it mixed up, especially now that they're Royce
first.
Kennedy's Last Light.
So
It's
it's
the
First
opposite of
Light.
what his is.
Yep.
Um, but it does make me think of that game, I think, because that one
Yeah.
is a bit crunchier.
Yeah.
So far, I would say this year, if you like Circadians, if you've played that one from them, I would say this new series of games kind of feels more like that.
Yeah, I would say
So I think if you like that one, there's a good chance you could like these, but not necessarily the same with Architects to this one. But you could. Not saying you can't. But yeah, so you probably weren't as excited as I was.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, oh, a new Garfield game, and it still has, from years back, it still does have that immediate excitement of like, oh, they're making a new game. They make good games, but then I remember, oh wait, they're getting heavier and heavier and crunchier games. So I'm like, okay, settle down here. You can't just blindly get excited about these games. I've enjoyed all the games, but I feel like I do kind of prefer probably like a Raiders level of complexity to games. That's probably a perfect level there, and so I wasn't overly excited about this one, especially. I love dice in games, but that's usually more for the exciting chucking of dice, which is a lot of luck based, and
Yes.
definitely I was not expecting it to be a dice chucker, but just seeing that it's a lot of dice manipulation.
Dice manipulation.
Which the Kickstarter video or whatever, the first like 5 minutes it seemed, were just explaining all the different ways to combine dice and workers together, to
Make
combine
colors.
colors and make new numbers and bump things up to sixes, and I'm like, oh my goodness. It just kept going through all the possible options, which it makes sense once you understand it, but to go through explaining it all, being the first thing I saw about it, I was a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, and that actually got me really excited.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is kind
It
of
is
like,
cool,
wow, there is a lot going
but
on there.
overwhelming.
But yeah, so we played it one time so far. We played a 3-player game with Michaela. And yeah, so it ended up being kind of a little bit of a pool building game. You're building, or a bag building game, where you're building a bag of different colored dice. Mostly, it seemed like the white dice is what you ended up getting added to your bag, but then you were trying to get some of kind of the primary colors, and then also getting the more rare, I would say, kind of secondary colors. And yeah, you just kind of build your bag up and then utilize those dice, and then you may get some meeples and stuff to try to create certain colors to take certain actions. And yeah, I found that to be pretty satisfying. At first, I would say it was a bit overwhelming. For sure, there's a lot going on in the game. This might be the most complex game, but at the same time, I'm not 100% sure I could say that. It's just because we've only played it one time. I feel like if I've played, so I'm trying to think, I've probably played Wayfarers almost a handful of times now, and I really like that one. That one's pretty complex too. It's got a lot going on. I don't know. Once you know how to play them, I don't know that I would say it's complexity.
Yeah, I feel like it
more
has
just a lot of choices.
Yeah, it does have a lot of choices. I feel like there might be. It might just feel a bit unintuitive, some parts of it, or a bit tricky to initially wrap the mind around, but once we did get going, I feel like I did catch on and know what I was doing by the end of the game, where I think Paladins took me a couple plays to actually start to wrap my head around it, so I would say that I guess the learning curve or whatever was a little quicker with this one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it definitely... It was, that's one thing, it was a longer game. It probably took us almost 3 hours, and obviously that was the first time playing it, like I said. So I think it would get quicker than that, just because it felt like about probably at our halfway point, it felt like, oh gosh, this is going to be a long, long, long game. And then it just kind of, it started speeding up, it felt like. Yeah. So once we kind of knew what to do in the game, it made it a lot quicker. Yeah. And then, the actions end up becoming kind of more intuitive, I think, where some of them, it only matters what the dice value is, the total dice value, versus some of them, it just matters what the color is, and then you got like one that's kind of a combination of what the color is and then some of the numbers. So kind of once you understand those ones, and it's like, oh, I can use these low rolled dice for this one because it doesn't really matter as much. Whereas, this one I need, higher numbers. I liked how that worked, and the game's theme is kind of, what you're doing is really translating different languages back to Arabic, and I really felt like, out of all Garphill games, which I would say are not that thematic overall, I feel, I don't get a feeling of theme that much. I really like the artworks and settings in the games, but I don't know that I necessarily always feel like I'm doing... I always feel like I'm building something, it seems like, in these games. So I guess Architects, you're kind of building it, so maybe. But this one, for translate... I don't know any other games where you are translating things, so I don't really have anything to compare it to. But I felt like that kind of came through once you kind of got going. It felt like... Or it was kind of a cool way to do it, where you had kind of these people that could translate from a certain language to another one, and you'd have to kind of use a chain of different people to kind of, go from Chinese to Hebrew, and then go to Hebrew to whatever, Persian or whatever, to back to Arabic. And it was just kind of cool how that worked, and that kind of different players kind of owned those ones. So the interaction in the game where, if you're using someone else's, you got to pay them a coin. I felt like it worked pretty well in this game. I know in Wayfarers they also kind of use a similar thing where if you interact with certain marked cards, you have to end up paying your opponents something for that. I felt like I liked it in this game more than I liked it in Wayfarers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm usually not a huge fan of that. Just any extra cost, especially if it's benefiting my opponents, I'm not a fan of. When it benefits me, I like it. But they never use my cards. But I didn't mind it in this one. I thought it didn't feel like, a big sway. Like, if someone got the only Arabic card out there, which, I mean, you should have the option to go get another Arabic card, but if they are the only one and everyone's using theirs, it's going to be a good bonus for them. They're going to be getting coins, and they can then use other cards, and then their person will then retire and come back to their board and score points, so it's going to be good for them, but it didn't feel like, they've got it won now because they have the best card out there. It just was a good bonus and not game deciding, so I like that. And I will say that the act of finally translating did feel thematic, and I liked how that played out as a little mini game.
Yeah.
But everything else,
everything
that you're
leading
building,
up to it. That's true. Everything leading up to it.
all that just felt pretty generic and didn't
that's
really
true.
tie to the
That's
theme.
fair.
I don't think.
That's fair. Yeah. I should say, yeah. It was more of just that piece that really felt like it, and wonder if you could just bring that piece out of it and make like a really fast, snappy kind of game.
Yeah, that
Maybe
is
something
interesting.
like
With,
that, maybe, but-
since they've gotten more and more complicated, like each one has a few different areas to the game where I'm like, I like all these things. I would almost want just a bunch of individual small games to really explore those little parts, and that is one part that I would really like to see something maybe smaller, simpler, quicker version of.
But yeah, I still felt like everything kind of still came together though. All the different actions you could do, and then kind of the one of your other main areas that you're working on are these different tracks of the different 6
Classic
different colors.
Garphill with all they got more tracks than ever.
Yeah, they got more tracks than ever, and kind of going up those tracks will get you different benefits, and then you can also have the potential to activate those during your rest turns if you use a specific card with that
Yes.
symbol on it.
Oh,
I found that
Yeah.
I found that pretty interesting. It would feel maybe more satisfying if you just triggered every single one of them.
Yeah.
But I feel like having to lay the card down and kind of plan that, and then kind of sometimes I feel like it didn't matter too much for me most of the time in which order they activated.
Yeah.
But there were a couple times where, well, I want to activate this one first because it's one of them that bumps the track. So if I bump that track before I activate that track, I can actually get a better benefit. And
Yeah.
that felt satisfying. But I would say overall, maybe the ordering of things didn't feel like it mattered too much most of the time.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I really liked how that worked, where you didn't get to activate everything, but you kind of got to
specialize in a
pick.
few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like those tracks as well. I will say though that there's, what are there? 1, 2, 3,
6.
4. There's 6 tracks. I feel like these tracks were the least kind of like intuitively tied to the rest of the gameplay compared to other ones. Like when I think back to Raiders, it's like each of those tracks really had a meaning, like adding extra power to your raids and things like that. And these, they're just build them up and then choose when to activate them. They're not necessarily inherently tied to. They do kind of correspond to different parts of the game, but I didn't feel like. It wasn't like I just knew, like, oh, I'm 5 on the red, I have extra power.
That's true.
It takes a little more to really see what you're going to get from the tracks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I wouldn't say it really felt like there was any connection of. But I guess it's not that I was looking for it either. But
Yeah.
I didn't immediately notice any, like, oh yeah, purple is this, which relates to this, which makes sense. Red is this. It just was kind of, well, if you look at the track, okay, it looks like as you go up purple, you get coins, different coins. As you go up another one, you get some free workers. As you go up another one, you get to pull more dice. I think that was blue. You get to pull more dice. That's the one that everyone gets to trigger every time.
Yeah.
Because I was like, when I had originally, so I read through the rules, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, I don't remember. How do we get dice? I swear you got like 4 or 5 dice or something. But I'm like, we're not going to be able to have any dice left. But then as I was looking at the benefits, I'm like, oh yeah, that's how you get the dice. And then because you get the card that has blue on it, so everyone kind of has that card. So everyone activates blue, just so that you're always getting some dice, and you don't get into a predicament where you have no dice. And
Yeah.
you just
That'd be
taking rest turns or something. I don't know. But yeah, overall, I would say I enjoyed this one quite a bit, and I felt like the manipulation of the dice and stuff felt cooler in this one, I think, than Wayfarers.
Yeah.
Which all these shots I'm taking at Wayfarers, I really love Wayfarers, so
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's a bad game by any means. I just I know this was kind of the trilogy where they were going to use dice, and I felt like I liked this use of them better than that one so far. So
Yeah, I would say so as well. It does really. You do get to roll the dice in this one, and I mean I forget.
You get to
roll them in
Yeah.
Wayfarers, but it felt like there was a little more fun to that in this one, especially paired with all the different ways that you can manipulate the dice, which once you get into that and wrap your head around it, it is pretty satisfying. You can do quite a bit with the dice. Like you just have to, like if you have a white die, it's a 1, you just throw a white worker at it, now it's a 6. And then you just combine it with a blue, now it's a blue 6. It's very rewarding, I think, and satisfying.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. So yeah, I would say this one's probably, I don't need to play it more, but this one's right up there. It's probably like a 9.5.
Oh,
I really liked it.
9.5.
I really liked it. And yeah,
Wow.
I'd maybe think 10, but we'll see.
Wow.
I really liked the game quite a bit.
I mean,
It might be, we'll see with more plays, it might be a little long, but we'll see. Yeah, because I do feel like some of the Garphill games, especially recently, like we said, with them becoming a little more difficult, a little more crunchy, they have taken a little bit longer right away, and then as we played them more, it kind of shortens the time a little bit. So, yeah, if it gets in around, get it down to about 2 hours, I don't think that's a bad time for this game.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to be the antagonist here going into this, and as we started,
And he's going to be
going through the rules, I'm like, I want to give this a 3 just to wave my fist at these super complicated games. But as I got going, I did enjoy a lot of the mechanisms in here and a lot of the mini games, I guess I would say, manipulating the dice or translating the things I think were the standout parts of it for me. So I enjoyed those enough to probably put this maybe a 7.5 to 7.75, which, like you said, it will take a few plays, I think, if I can give it a few plays, to see how long it's going to continue being, which isn't a huge issue. I don't think we mind very much. It does make it hard to table, but and more just how much I can wrap my head around all the moving parts. I mean, I don't have to understand it completely, but just to feel a little more comfortable with all of these things instead of just sitting in my corner enjoying the little parts here or the little parts there. If I could get a more grand grasp of the entire game, and I think this one could move up a little bit.
Nice. But yeah, we've also got an unboxing video going up alongside this, so you can check that out if you want to see kind of all the components in the box. But yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, I'd maybe go out there and look for other content on this one, because I think there's a lot in the box to unpack that we probably didn't even cover.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one's got a lot going on, so definitely check those out, and I'm sure eventually someday we'll do an actual chippy review on this after we've gotten some more plays in, but that could be a little ways down the road.
We're going to have to dedicate a whole month to Garphill Games.
We will have to. But otherwise, we hope to see you on that unboxing video, and as always, don't forget to
keep on nibbling
on our content.